lot for staying with us. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Paris for his two-day visit to France. He was welcomed by the French Prime Minister Élisabeth at the Paris airport and received a ceremonial welcome as well. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to have a bilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron and will also attend a private dinner hosted by the latter. He's visiting the European country as a guest of honor for the Bastille Day parade upon the invitation of the French President. The Prime Minister's visit is being considered an attempt to enhance bilateral and defence relations, especially with France. Take a look at what's on the agenda, what's on the table as far as this key visit is concerned. Strengthening strategic defence ties between the two countries, enhancing cooperation in maritime domain security initiatives, collaboration on cutting-edge scientific research, which is going to be very important, boosting partnerships for sustainable energy solutions, a bid to foster people-to-people connections, and boosting bilateral trade and investment opportunities, which again has become a hallmark of India's relationship with most developed countries. Here are some of the major defence deals that are set to be inked or have already been approved. So the procurement of the 26 Rafale M jets is the big one. Acquisition of 3 Scorpion-class submarines. Co-development of engines for next-gen fighter jets. Agreement on world's largest nuclear power plant. Remember, MOU was signed 7 years ago for setting up this large nuclear power plant in the world, the largest in the world at Jaipur in Maharashtra. The project is still hanging. And advanced stage talks on multi-role choppers, which is also on the cards. The big question or the discussion we have today is, with this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi in France, is this going to be a boost to Indo-France ties, and to what extent?
I'm very proud to be an Indian, and I'm so happy to see that today India is a country of honor, the first time ever in the history of France. So very, very proud, and thank you, Modi ji, thank you.
Modi hai to mumkin hai.
Behind me, in a very special gesture, the Prime Minister of France, Madam Élisabeth Borne, has come personally to the airport to receive the Prime Minister.
It is a moment of tremendous pride for us, since we'll be representing our country as well as our force on foreign land in front of our own Prime Minister, who will be witnessing the parade.
Just how should India look at this partnership? For more on that, I'm joined by Sanjay Suri, my colleague, who's tracking this visit of the Prime Minister in Paris. Also, Captain Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, is with us. Defence has been a very key element of the Indo-French cooperation. But Sanjay, I want to come to you first up. The Prime Minister is set to meet the President of the Senate. What's the significance of that meeting?
Well, the real significance will come at the last meeting of the day, and that is with President Macron. Prime Minister Modi will go to the Élysée Palace. He'll be received there by President Macron, and this has been described as an official private dinner. It is expected that there are outstanding issues in the Rafale proposed deal with the submarines issue that do need to be ironed out, and they need intervention from the very top, and that is what this dinner meeting will be about. It is only after these matters get ironed out and agreed upon that we could have an announcement. There are very complex issues at stake. The extent to which farming of manufacture can be transferred to India, the extent to which technology can be shared, and above everything else, the cost. France has been very reliable for India. We saw that in the Kargil war. The systems on the Mirage 2000 gave vital information, and then we saw again with the Rafale order itself, there were many further requirements by the Indian Air Force, and the French, the company Dassault in particular, met almost all of those requirements, and in good time. Of course, at a price. And that will be the principal matter to be discussed between the Prime Minister and the President.
Before I go across to Alok Bansal, Sanjay, one more question. A lot is being talked about the kind of welcome the Prime Minister has been accorded, the French Prime Minister there in person to receive him. What is being said in Paris itself about this?
Well, certainly a very warm welcome and to be cherished and to be pleased about, no doubt. But there's a point beyond which you can't read too much into this sort of thing. There is a lot of ceremony, there is a lot of politeness. People go out of their way sometimes. In diplomatic terms, that protocol itself is an expression of something political. But really, the issue at stake is the defense agreements and the defense purchases, and that's going to be a matter of hard negotiations, hard bargaining, hard cash for India. That may be hard to come by, but clearly India has its needs and France has its needs to sell to India. Exactly what the terms are, that is where the crunch will come.
Okay, Sanjay, I'll come back to you. Let me also go across to Captain Alok Bansal on exactly that issue. How about we to look at this cooperation between India and France when it comes to India's defense needs are concerned? Is it that France truly acknowledges that it needs to do more for India and is acknowledging that? Or is India just a market for French defense goods?
See, we need to understand that India and France have had convergence of relationship for a very, very long time. Because France, despite being a part of the Western alliance, have always pursued a neutral or an independent foreign policy. In fact, Charles de Gaulle, despite being a member of NATO, had actually pulled out its troops out of NATO. So from that time onwards, France has always been appreciative of India's concerns as far as foreign policy issues are concerned. In fact, in 98, if you remember, just after India went nuclear, we did first nuclear tests. The first foreign leader to visit India when India was under sanctions was President Chirac of France. So India and France have had huge convergence. Even in the International Solar Alliance, we have come together. And the biggest defense deal that India actually signed in recent times was the Rafale deal, which we signed with France. And now we are trying to take it further. And in Prime Minister Modi's key program has been Atmanirbhar Bharat. Again, here the self-reliance is primarily in the field of defense. He wants defense production to go up. So he would want that now that this is going to be a second order of Rafale. The first order we had brought certain level of indigenization, certain parts were being manufactured in India, that was being done. Now with this second order, I think we would want that level of indigenization to go up. We would ideally want to set up certain assembly lines in India. That is what I think we will be looking forward to. These defense deals are major deals. France, as it is our second largest defense supplier. We need to understand that. And traditionally, France has never been part of the sanctions lobby. Because in the past, we have suffered, we in the defense forces have suffered Western sanctions, which have actually had debilitating effect. But France has never been part of it. And that's why France is far more reliable ally. So if we have to diversify, France has been one of our first choices.
No, but when you say far more reliable, you say in context of who others? Because we've seen recently a little bit, people say, a paradigm shift in the Indo-US relationship as well, which used to be much governed by US's interests in Pakistan and Afghanistan. That condition has been almost removed completely. And the kind of welcome and the kind of euphoria we saw with the Prime Minister's US visit, it seems like that there is a new era of Indo-US partnership. So when you say more reliable, in context of whom?
See, we need to be very clear. Indo-US relationship is primarily a manifestation of common values, the common values of democracy and pluralism, and also the rising stature of Indian diaspora.
Right.
India-US relations have improved with the rise of diaspora. Today, Indian diaspora is the #1 diaspora in United States. They are actually more powerful and more prosperous than even the Jewish diaspora, which was often considered to be the most influential one. So that is what brought us together. But in the past, we have seen that the US and the other Western countries have imposed sanctions. We saw what happened after the nuclear tests. There were, again, in the past also, we have had times in late 80s, 90s when we were under severe sanctions, where many of our defense equipment which were procured from the West or which had components from the West could not fly.
Right.
Hopefully such things would not come again. But there is always a possibility of a Congress, because India always cherishes its strategic autonomy. And that strategic autonomy, France has been one of those countries which has always recognized India's strategic autonomy. And that's why you will find that whenever we had to move away, even during the Cold War era, when our primary source of equipment was Soviet Union, and whenever we had to move away from this to a Western medium, we have gone to France. We went for Mirage, we went now for Rafale. So in the past, we have been going to France from time and again for defense equipment, because France has been an extremely reliable defense supplier and a partner who shared our vision to a very great extent of strategic autonomy.
Okay. Let me also ask you the question about, how France is looking at India. Is there, you'd see a change? Because, in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict also, France has played a very different role than some of the other Western powers. And even in that context, there were talks happening about how India is not taking the stand that the Western world leads it to take. The fact that India was buying oil from Russia was being heavily criticized. France played a very different role in that. So do you think that that is just the long-term perspective that the French have on India, or is there something different also happening or new happening?
Again, in Russia-Ukraine war, you have to look. Within the Western world, there are two different narratives. One is the Eastern European narrative and the American narrative, which is stridently anti-Russia. In fact, France and Germany, to a very great extent and to a very great extent, wanted some sort of a negotiated settlement with Russia. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And that's been the case. So I think France understands India's compulsions, and consequently, France has been extremely understanding of India's requirements. And as a result, France wants a long-term partnership with India. India is a huge market. India is a big country. India is the most populous country in the world. And I think if you go historically also, India-France relations have been very, very good. Inviting Prime Minister for a Bastille's Day parade is very, very significant, because please understand, unlike India's Republic Day parade, they don't have a VIP foreign guest coming every year. It is now after Donald Trump in 2017 that we'll have a foreign dignitary attending a Bastille Day parade, and that's Indian Prime Minister. And in Bastille Day parade, a foreign contingent marching is unheard of. Very, 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 very rare. And I think this time we'll have all three contingents from all three services marching in Bastille Day parade. That's very, very important. Now, these issues are very, very important. And as your correspondent rightly said, that tonight's negotiations are going to be critical, because price is, of course, one factor. But what is going to be more important is that India would want a substantial part of indigenization.
Yes.
We would want, since we are going for a second repeat order of Rafale, I think there will be some amount of indigenization, because earlier Rafale insisted and managed to shift an Indian partner from HAL to a private sector. Hopefully now that their requirements have been made, the indigenization content would have to be raised in this particular issue, because India wants to have Make in India. Atmanirbhar Bharat is the key thrust of Prime Minister.
All right. Just hold on to your thoughts. It's a good thing at least that, this Rafale deal is not mired in the kind of politics and allegations that the previous one did get into. And we all know the setbacks that India has faced, especially the Indian Air Force, because of the almost complete lack of any kind of procurement that was happening to our, squadron strength. But let's also listen into some more reactions on this, the Prime Minister's visit.
मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूँगा कि पिछले 2014 से हमारे आर्थिक संबंध बहुत तेज़ी से आगे बढ़े हैं, करीब करीब अब दुगुने हो गए हैं। पिछले 8-9 सालों में फ्रांस की ओर से भारत में निवेश बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ा है। फ्रांस की सबसे बड़ी कंपनी, जितनी भी आप बड़ी कंपनी का नाम लें, वो भारत में मौजूद हैं, और केवल भारत के मार्केट के लिए नहीं, वो भारत को अब पिछले कुछ सालों में अपने ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन का बहुत अहम हिस्सा बना रहे हैं। और साथ ही साथ भारत को एक एक्सपोर्ट हब के रूप में देखते हैं। भारत को रिसर्च, टेक्नोलॉजी एंड डेवलपमेंट, इनोवेशन का एक बहुत बड़ा हब मानते हैं, इंजीनियरिंग का, डिजाइन का, डेवलपमेंट का।
एक जज्बा जब आप फीलिंग अंदर ही महसूस कर सकते हो, शायद जो बाहर खड़े हैं वो देखने वालों को भी लग रहा होगा, लेकिन एक फौजी के अंदर भी वो जज्बा होता है और वो बड़े प्राउड की बात है। जब हम आगे कदम बढ़ा के आगे मंच की तरफ बढ़ेंगे, मोदी जी को सलूट करेंगे तो बहुत प्राउड फील आएगा।